The rain had stopped, but the smell of wet earth still lingered in the air when Ethan stepped into the little cafe on Maple Street. It was the kind of place that had wooden chairs, chipped mugs, and music so soft you could almost hear your own heartbeat. He had chosen this cafe because it was where they first met. And because, somewhere deep inside, he believed she'd still remember that. He checked his watch for the 5th time in 10 minutes, 2:15 p.m. She was supposed to be here at 1. A whole hour late. He wasn't angry, at least that's what he told himself. He stirred his coffee absently, watching the swirl of cream disappear into the dark liquid. Outside, the rain began again, just a light drizzle tapping on the window beside him. He smiled faintly. Lily always said she loved the rain. It makes the world softer, she used to say. Like it's forgiving everyone, just for a moment. Ethan sighed. It had been 2 years since they'd spoken. 2 years since he walked out of her apartment without saying goodbye. And yet, here he was, waiting again. Waiting like a fool. He looked around the cafe. Couples laughing. A mother reading to her child. A man tapping away on a laptop. Everything looked ordinary, except him. He felt like a ghost from another time, haunting a place that no longer remembered him. When she messaged him 3 days ago, it had taken him a full hour to believe it wasn't a mistake. Can we meet? She'd written. At the cafe. Same one. Please. No explanations. No apologies. Just those words. He had stared at the screen for a long time before replying with a simple, okay. Now, sitting there, he wasn't sure if coming had been a good idea. Part of him wanted to walk out, pretend it didn't matter. But the other part, the part that still remembered her laugh, her messy handwriting, her habit of talking to flowers, couldn't leave. He waited. At 2:30, the waitress came over and asked gently, "Would you like another coffee, sir?" He nodded. "Yeah, sure." She smiled. "She'll come. They always do." He chuckled softly, not believing a word. Time slipped by. The rain grew heavier, and people began hurrying in, dripping umbrellas and damp coats. Every time the door opened, his heart jumped a little. Every time it wasn't her, something inside him sank lower. At 3:10, he finally gave up pretending. He pulled out his phone and opened the message thread. Her last message blinked at him from the screen. Just 2 words, "Please come." He typed and deleted 3 different replies. He didn't know what to say. He didn't even know what he wanted to say. That's when the door opened again. She walked in, slowly, almost hesitantly, holding an umbrella that was half broken. Her hair was damp, sticking to her cheeks. She looked thinner, paler, but still unmistakably Lily. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she smiled, that small, uncertain smile he remembered too well, and whispered, "Hey." Ethan stood up so fast he nearly knocked over his cup. "You're late," he said, trying to sound casual, but his voice cracked on the last word. "I know," she said softly. "I'm sorry." He wanted to say something sarcastic. Something sharp. But when he saw her eyes, red-rimmed and tired, the words died in his throat. "Sit," he said instead. "You must be freezing." She sat down across from him, clutching her mug with both hands. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy, filled with everything they hadn't said in 2 years. "I didn't think you'd come," she finally said. "Neither did I." He tried to smile. "So, why did you ask me to meet?" She looked down at her hands. "Because I owed you the truth." He frowned. "About what?" She took a deep breath. "About why I disappeared." The cafe noise faded. The rain, the chatter, the clinking cups, all blurred into nothing. Ethan leaned forward. "You said you needed space. That's all you said before you vanished." She nodded slowly. "I did. But that wasn't the real reason." He waited. "I left because I was sick," she said quietly. "Really sick." His heart stopped. "What do you mean?" She looked up, her eyes glistening. "I was diagnosed with lymphoma. The doctors said it was aggressive. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want you to see me like that." Ethan felt like the air had been punched out of him. "Lily, my God. I thought I'd be gone in months," she continued. "So I pushed you away. I didn't want you to waste your life on me." He stared at her, his hands trembling. "You thought leaving would protect me." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "It was the only way I knew how." Ethan looked away, blinking hard. The rain outside had turned into a steady downpour, blurring the world beyond the glass. He remembered all those nights he'd lain awake, wondering what he'd done wrong. The unanswered calls, the silence, the endless what-ifs. He'd blamed himself for everything. And now, this. How long have you been? He couldn't finish the sentence. I finished treatment 6 months ago, she said, her voice breaking. I'm in remission. The doctors say I'm lucky. Really lucky. He swallowed. And now you're here. I didn't know if I had the right to see you again, she whispered. But I couldn't keep pretending you didn't exist. I wanted you to know the truth, even if it's too late. He stared at her for a long time, searching her face, the same face he'd loved and hated and missed in equal measure. There were faint scars on her neck, traces of pain she hadn't tried to hide. Too late, he finally said. You really think it's too late? She looked at him, startled. After everything I did, Ethan took a deep breath. You broke me, Lily. You really did. But, I never stopped hoping you'd walk through that door again. Her lips trembled. I don't deserve that kind of forgiveness. He smiled sadly. Maybe not. But I'm giving it anyway. The waitress returned with 2 fresh cups of coffee. She placed them down gently and said, looks like the rain's not stopping anytime soon. Lily laughed softly. It was the first real laugh he'd heard from her in years. Good, she said. Maybe it means we have more time. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. About how she spent months in and out of hospitals. About how he moved to a new city but never changed his number. About how life kept going, even when they both felt it shouldn't. When she finally told him about the scar on her chest, he reached across the table and took her hand. She flinched at first, then relaxed, her fingers curling into his. It's strange, she said quietly. The doctors said I might lose my heart in surgery. But it turns out, I almost lost it long before that. Ethan smiled faintly. You didn't lose it. You just gave it away to the wrong fool who waited too long in a cafe. She laughed again, and for a moment, everything felt like it used to. The world shrank down to 2 people, 1 table, and a rain-soaked window. As the evening light dimmed, the cafe began to empty. The waitress gave them a knowing smile as she wiped the counter. Outside, the rain finally slowed to a drizzle, and a pale sunset peeked through the clouds. Lily looked out the window and said softly, you know, I used to sit by this same window and imagine us growing old together. Then I got sick, and I stopped dreaming. I thought dreams were only for people who had time. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. Then maybe it's time to start dreaming again. She turned to him, eyes shimmering with tears. Do you really mean that? I've waited for you for 2 years, he said. I can wait a lifetime if I have to. Her face crumpled, and before he could react, she leaned across the table and hugged him, really hugged him, as if she'd been holding her breath for years. He held her just as tightly, feeling the warmth of her against him, the faint tremor of her heartbeat. When they finally pulled apart, her eyes were wet, but there was a quiet peace in them now. Thank you, she whispered. For waiting, he smiled. For you, I'd wait through 1,000 coffees. The cafe lights flickered as the last customers left. The waitress dimmed the lamps, and a soft song played, a slow, gentle tune about coming home. Ethan stood up and grabbed her umbrella. Come on, let's walk. The rain's lighter now. They stepped outside together. The air smelled clean, washed. The street glistened under the streetlights. She slipped her hand into his, hesitantly at first, then firmly. They walked in silence, their footsteps echoing on the wet pavement. After a while, Lily looked up at him and said, you know what's funny? I was terrified you wouldn't come today. He chuckled. And I was terrified you would. They both laughed then, really laughed, the kind of laughter that comes only after pain. As they reached the corner, she stopped and looked back at the cafe. That place saw the worst of us, she said softly. But maybe it just saw us finding our way back. He looked at her, the glow of the streetlight reflected in her eyes. Maybe it's where we were always meant to meet, again. For a long moment, they just stood there, the rain falling softly around them, washing away the years of silence. She smiled. Ethan, yeah, next time I'm late, promise you'll wait again. He grinned. Always. The 2 of them walked down the quiet street, hand in hand, as the rain whispered its forgiveness on the world. And though they didn't know what tomorrow would bring, one thing was certain, this time, neither of them was walking away.